Kia ora everyone. My name is Nick Naysmith. I work for Mountains to Sea Conservation Trust. I live in Whangārei and I'm the manager of the Northland I spawning habitat restoration project. I thought that I would quickly acknowledge our supporters in the project so far. A massive thank you to the Ministry for the Environment for their funding for this project over the last 2.5 years. To Foundation North and Fonterra for their contribution to the project also. We have staff at both Department of Conservation in Whangārei and Northern Regional Council who give us in-kind time in the field as well. And a massive thank you to our hapu partners, Patuharakeke, Ngāti Manu, Ngāti Kuri and the Whirinaki Trust, without whose enthusiasm for the project and for giving us access to their awa, that the project really wouldn't have gone that far. So what is the project? NISHRIP, we fondly call it. The acronym is a lot quicker than the full name. The project aims to scale up collaborative work in locating, protecting and enhancing īnanga spawning habitats across Te Tai Tokerau, Northland. And this mahi is done alongside massive amounts of community engagement and an increase in capacity and capability building across the region, particularly within our hapu groups, our hapu team members. So, the project has a number of objectives. Objective 1, to increase knowledge around water quality on the 25 awa that we work in and to create a GIS data layer of ground truth īnanga spawning extents that enable us to target and restoration and protection of these īnanga spawning sites. Objective 2 was to increase capacity and capability, as I said, of at least 265 people on how to identify, protect and restore īnanga spawning habitats throughout Northland. Objective 3 was to create a large-scale collaborative regional workflow, a model that will empower local communities to protect these critical spawning areas. And last but not least, Objective 4, obviously to undertake our own conservation and restoration and habitat enhancement interventions based on the spatial analysis of and habitat prioritisation. What are the findings so far? And this is very brief. The project's still got a year to go, and so we haven't really dived into the data too much. But significantly, we've found in the last 2.5 years, so 2.5 seasons really of spawning, that we're finding īnanga spawning in every month between March and October. This year, I've got my team back in the field and we're going to be searching in November and December, maybe January, February if we find the time. But essentially, if we're not looking, we're not finding, and if we are looking, we're finding. So we keep sending the teams out a month extra each year, and so our spawning season in Northland appears to be a lot longer than a lot of other īnanga populations around the country. This map here is part of our map series that we've got. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But it seems to be that īnanga have preferred spawning sites or favoured spawning sites. This is the Ruakaka awa. It flows into the Bream Bay catchment. It flows from left to right, and you can see down here. So the blue triangles are our salinity measurements, our saline measurements. The white dots are our spawning sites. And so even though in some months, particularly in the winter months after high flow events or during high flow events, we are still getting īnanga spawning in these preferred spawning sites. So there's something that's drawing them back there. What that is, I'm assuming it's a chemical cue, or the literature would suggest that it's a chemical cue of some sort. Whether or not it's a pheromone that's left behind by the previous spawning population or something in situ at these sites, we don't know, but there's definitely a PhD in that if there's anyone in the room looking for something to do. So they are definitely returning to these sites over and over and over again, and so we've concentrated a lot of our restoration efforts all around these areas, including fencing, riparian planting and a whole lot of pest mammal control. So outcomes so far for the project. So in the last 2.5 years, we have conducted 152 saltwater wedges. We've discovered 115 egg patches across and in 25 spawning sites. Just to give a bit of background, the only previously recorded spawning site in Northland was discovered in the 1980s by Department of Conservation in the Otaika River. And then all other subsequent spawning sites in Northland have been discovered by Mountains to Sea Conservation Trust, and this project alone has discovered another 25. We have installed over 4 kilometres of fencing in the last 2.5 years and planted just under 16,000 natives around our spawning sites. And the project has been instrumental in initiating the remediation of a fish passage, remediating a weir on the Ruakakaawa, and that project's about to kick off in the next couple of weeks, and this will allow adult īnanga to reach those critical adult habitat. At the moment, they're not getting past the weir. And also, we've far exceeded our engagement mahi. We've currently engaged at least 342 students and community members in both education and environmental action. So why are we doing this? Well, īnanga play an important role in our freshwater ecosystems. Simon pointed that out very eloquently this morning in his keynote speech. And so īnanga are at risk in declining according to Department of Conservation's threat classification. And mostly this is due to habitat loss because of changes in land use. Across the country, at least 90% of our coastal wetlands have been filled in. In Northland alone, it's 97%. So this has been a move to extensive agriculture and farming across the motu. And so what do these changes, what do the changes in land use mean for īnanga? Well, they have a fairly unique reproductive strategy. They essentially lay their eggs on land. So they lay their eggs in riparian grasses during spring high tides, and the eggs remain out of water for up to a month before being inundated by the next high tide. So īnanga need long, tall, dense habitat for the eggs to remain viable. And so mowing and or grazing of these riparian margins significantly reduces reproductive success. If you've been in some of the other fish talks already, the discussion has been īnanga are an annual species. The eggs, wrong button, eggs laid in riparian grasses. They spend about a month before being washed out to sea as a larval phase. They spend 3 to 6 months out in the moana before they start schooling along our coastlines and start swimming upstream. Then they'll spend another 3 to 6 months in adult habitat before completing the cycle. Whether or not they're dying through simulparity or through senescence, we don't know. It's another great PhD opportunity, I would imagine. I thought I'd show you this really quick, cool video. So this is īnanga spawning in an awa in Northland. You can see the awa has inundated the kaikuyu on the side of the river, and they are spawning in the shallows. The water is white because of the presence of milt, and they're busily doing their thing. And this is what they look like. If you ever get the opportunity to go out into the awa with your fish geek friends, take the opportunity. It's really cool. These events are often accompanied by the sound of tuna slurping. They are out there taking advantage of the īnanga being preoccupied. It's very cool. The team in the last 2.5 years have come across 7 of these spawning events happening, so we do get to see them. A couple of the other things that the project has endeavoured to do is create field apps for our field staff using Survey 123 and field maps. So all of our data is collected on our phones and the information goes directly into our hub, our data hub, which makes the process of telling our story really easy, and it makes the process of reporting to MFE really easily. But at the moment, our hub looks like this. It's wrong button again. It's private at the moment. We want it to be a public-facing hub one day, but at the moment it's just available to our users of the project. And it really just summarises the work that we're doing, what we've found, yeah, so that's what it looks like. So we're still beta testing this, of course. We're 2.5 years in, but we're getting to the point where we're getting really happy with the product that we've created. One of the other key components of this project was to try and come up with a predictive model of īnanga spawning sites. So a good friend of ours, Nick Bamford from the Northland Regional Council, has been working on this behind the scenes, and he's applied various different GIS layers over top of our īnanga spawning zones. And the model that fits most best at the moment is the 50, 100 and 100 plus year flooding. Again, this is the Ruakaka Awa, and when we overlay this flood data onto the Ruakaka River, what we're noticing across our awa in Northland is that certainly the spawning zones are sitting almost at the top of the most inward progression of these flood zones. So at the moment this model is working quite well, but I'm sure that there's still some work to be done on this. Obviously a predictive model would mean that other regional councils, district councils around the country could lay this sort of model over their awa, and it would be good for policy and managing freshwater. If we knew where we thought the īnanga were going to be spawning, then you can limit the type of work that's been doing on these awa. Stop the landowners from getting in there with their diggers. Obviously, there are issues with dealing with data. There are sensitivities around it, particularly with regard to tangata whenua. And so we have a code of conduct that we have developed for the use of the app and the hub. But essentially, in a nutshell, what we're saying is that Mountains to Sea Conservation Trust are the caretakers of the data, and that ownership remains with tangata whenua, and that's really the key point there. So what next for our project? We need to secure more funding. It's been said 1 million times in the last week. The project funding comes to an end in June of next year. After that, we're not quite sure what's going to happen, so we need more funding. We don't want all of the hard work that we've put into this to simply fall over. If we do get the funding, we'd like to expand the project. There are plenty more awa around Northland that need investigation, and so we want to get there. There'll be some tweaks to the way that the project is run, and I think some pet projects. We'd certainly like to start getting in there and constructing wetlands. I think they're a really important part of the īnanga conservation space. We work with a couple of community groups in Northland that, through their connection with us, are already starting to do these things, and I think that there's a real opportunity there. And lastly, we really want this to develop into a national program. We already have a national īnanga spawning program. It's really it's been a resource development program for the most part, but we want to roll out the hub and the apps on a national level, something akin to the New Zealand Freshwater Fish database, so that we can collect more data. And the more data we have, the more power we have. So yeah, kia ora, that's me.